You are tuned into Justice Insight Cam. Here, we examine genuine law enforcement encounters through actual bodycam footage. Rather than just watching, we investigate the underlying truths, legal principles, and key lessons of every stop. Let's pursue justice together.
Step away from the aircraft access gate now.
Officer, I'm a commercial pilot. I'm in uniform. I'm reporting for duty.
Don't play games with me. People like you don't just report for duty back here.
Say that again into your body camera, because that right there is going to cost you your badge.
At exactly 6:42 p.m. on the outer service road of Desert Vista International Airport, what should have been a routine employee access verification turned into a full-blown detention, a delayed departure, and an investigation that would end with one simple line on an official document: certification permanently revoked. The footage would later spread like wildfire online, not because it was loud, not because it was chaotic, but because it was cold, controlled, and unbelievably clear. Because this wasn't a story about someone trying to win a confrontation. This was a story about what happens when someone with a badge tries to manufacture authority and runs into someone whose entire career depends on procedure, documentation, and the truth. Before we get into it, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you want more stories where knowledge, discipline, and calm pressure flip the entire power dynamic. Because the turning point in this one, it happens when Darius says 7 words that the officer can't undo. Captain Darius Cole was 34, but he moved with the steadiness of someone who'd been responsible for lives for years. That's what flying does to you. It compresses your ego and expands your sense of consequence. While most people his age were still figuring out who they wanted to be, Darius had already become the kind of professional who could walk into a cockpit at 3 a.m., read a weather packet full of bad news, and still sound calm enough to keep everyone steady. He was a commercial airline captain with a spotless record, a former Air Force transport pilot, and the guy co-workers called the checklist man, not as a joke, but as a compliment. He was the type who read procedures the way other people read social media, because he'd learned early that you don't improvise your way through high-stakes systems. You follow the framework, you document, you verify, you protect yourself and everyone around you. And Darius had one more skill that mattered tonight. He understood chain of command not as a vibe, as a structure. And if you've ever worked in a structured system, aviation, military, medicine, you know exactly what that means. On this particular Thursday evening in late summer, Darius was doing something boring, normal. He'd flown in earlier, grabbed a quick meal, and now he was commuting back to the airport for a scheduled overnight trip. Nothing dramatic, no drama in his head, just a routine start to a routine shift. The sun was sinking behind the desert horizon, painting the sky a burnt orange. Heat still shimmered above the pavement. The airport perimeter lights were beginning to dominate the scene, a grid of bright white points that made everything look crisp and a little unreal. Service vehicles moved like slow insects along marked routes. Somewhere far off, a baggage cart beeped in reverse, steady and annoying. Darius parked in the employee lot, shouldered his flight bag, and headed toward a restricted access gate that airline crews used to move quickly between areas. He wasn't cutting corners. He wasn't sneaking. He wasn't trying to get away with anything. He was in full uniform, pressed shirt, tie, cap in hand, stripes visible, walking like a man with a job to do. Then the SUV appeared. It came around the bend faster than it needed to, headlights flaring, then the instant flash of red and blue. The vehicle stopped at an angle that felt less like safety and more like a statement, a message. I control this space. Darius didn't flinch. He did what he always did. He observed, he catalogued, he mentally noted the time. He noted the positioning of the vehicle. He noted that the officer wasn't approaching casually. He was approaching like someone who'd already written the narrative. Officer Brent Haskins had been airport police for 11 years. In that world, people learn routines, and routines can make you sloppy. Credential checks, perimeter patrols, removing unauthorized vehicles. Haskins had done it long enough to feel untouchable, the way some people do when they've never been meaningfully challenged by the system they claim to represent. And the moment he saw Darius, black man, pilot uniform, restricted area, something in Haskins' face tightened like a decision being made. "Where are you going?" Haskins demanded before Darius could even speak. Darius kept his tone polite. "Crew check-in, I'm reporting for duty." Haskins' eyes flicked over the uniform like it was a costume. "Uh-huh. ID." Darius nodded. "Yes, sir. My airline ID and airport badge are on my lanyard. I'm going to reach for them. It's a small detail, but it matters." Darius asked permission before moving, not because he was afraid, because he was methodical. He knew how quickly body cam footage gets interpreted by strangers who weren't there. He knew how narratives get built, so he gave no one an excuse. He handed over the credentials. Haskins didn't just glance at them and hand them back like a routine verification. He held them too long. He stared. He turned the badge over like he expected to find the word "fake" printed on the back. He looked from the credentials to Darius's face and back again, and you could hear the gears grinding in his mind. "This doesn't match the story I wanted." "Where'd you get this uniform?" Haskins asked. Darius blinked once. "From my employer." "Your employer?" Haskins repeated like the concept itself was suspicious. "And who's that supposed to be?" "Sunrest Airlines," Darius said. "I'm the captain on Flight 882. Departure is scheduled for 8:15. Haskins gave a short laugh. Not amused, dismissive. "Captain, right?" Then Haskins said it, not screaming, not with a slur, just a quiet line of contempt. He delivered like a casual truth he expected the world to accept. "People like you always have a story, and the body cam caught it." Darius's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, like a pilot noticing a warning light come on. He didn't argue about people like you. He didn't explode. He did something smarter. He made it official. Officer Darius said, calm as altitude, "I want to be clear. Are you stopping me for a specific policy violation, or because you don't believe I'm a pilot?" Haskins' jaw flexed. "Don't get smart. I'm not being smart," Darius replied. "I'm asking for the reason." That's a normal question. This is where things started to go wrong for Haskins, in a way he couldn't see yet. Because a lot of people, most people get emotional when they feel disrespected. And emotion gives an aggressive authority figure what they want. A justification, a clip, a moment they can point to later and call hostile. Darius didn't give him that. Darius gave him process. Haskins stepped closer, step away from the gate. "I am away from the gate," Darius said, taking one slow step back. "Am I being detained?" Haskins' eyes narrowed. "You are now." "Okay," Darius said, and his voice didn't rise. "For what reason?" Haskins paused for a fraction of a second. You can hear it in his breath. He wasn't used to being asked to name the reason. "For suspicious behavior," he snapped. Darius gave a single nod, as if he'd just been told the weather. "Understood." "What is the suspicious behavior?" Haskins didn't answer the question. He moved to a new angle, one that felt more like an accusation. "Who are you really meeting back here?" Haskins asked. Darius's face stayed neutral. "I'm meeting my first officer and my flight attendants in the briefing room. Then I'm flying a scheduled passenger flight." "Uh-huh," Haskins said, voice dripping disbelief. "And you expect me to believe that?" Darius took a slow breath. "Officer, my flight is staffed. The gate agents are waiting. The passengers are booked. If you delay me, you delay a departure." Haskins smirked. "You're not delaying anything. You're delaying yourself." Darius looked directly at the body camera on Haskins' chest. Not dramatically, just intentionally. Okay. And then he said the 7 words that changed everything. "I'd like a supervisor here, please." Haskins' head snapped. "No." Darius didn't react. "I'm requesting a supervisor." "You don't get to request," Haskins started, stepping closer again. "I am requesting a supervisor," Darius repeated, voice steady. "And I would like you to state clearly why you believe I'm suspicious." For a brief second, Haskins froze. Not because he was suddenly reasonable, but because he felt something dangerous: accountability. He moved like a man trying to regain control fast. "Turn around." Darius didn't resist. He didn't argue. He simply asked one more question, the kind that makes bad decisions echo. "Am I under arrest? You will be if you keep talking," Haskins said, already reaching for handcuffs. Darius turned around slowly. "I'm not resisting. I'm complying, and I want it noted that I'm not resisting." Haskins cuffed him. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, how does a uniformed airline captain get handcuffed at an airport for trying to go to work? Keep that thought, because that's exactly the question the investigation would later ask. Haskins guided Darius toward the SUV, tight grip on his arm, as if he just caught a criminal in the act. Darius kept his posture upright. His flight bag sat on the pavement like an abandoned piece of evidence. "Where's your pilot license?" Haskins demanded. "In my flight bag," Darius said in a protected document sleeve. Haskins stared. "So, you admit you don't have it on you?" Darius's tone didn't change. Commercial pilots are required to have specific documents available. "Mine are in my bag. You can retrieve them if you want, but I'm cuffed, so you'll need to do it." Haskins leaned in like he'd found a win. Convenient. Darius glanced again at the body camera. "You can call Sunrest operations. They can verify me in 30 seconds. Haskins ignored that too, and instead started narrating to his camera the way people do when they're building a story. "Subject claims to be a pilot," Haskins said out loud. "Subject is in restricted area. Subject is evasive." Darius's voice cut in, still calm. "I'm not evasive. I answered every question. I provided my airline ID and my airport badge. You have both in your hand." Haskins didn't like that. He didn't like that Darius was calm. He didn't like that Darius was clear. He didn't like that Darius was building a record in real time. So Haskins did what small authority figures do when they feel exposed. He escalated. He opened the SUV door. "Get in." Darius shifted slightly. "Officer, I need to inform you of something." "What?" Haskins snapped. "I'm currently scheduled to operate a passenger flight." Darius said, "If I miss crew brief, the flight will be delayed. If the flight is delayed, airline operations will contact airport authorities. That will create a documented chain of events." For a second, Haskins hesitated, not because he cared about passengers, because he cared about paper trails. Then he forced Darius into the back seat anyway. And that's when the radio call came through. Faint, crackling, but real. "Unit 12, confirm you're stopping Sunrest crew on Service Road." Haskins stiffened. "Negative," he said too quickly. The dispatcher didn't match his energy. "Operations is requesting immediate status. They report Captain Cole has not checked in." Darius didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply leaned back against the seat and let the system do what it always does when you don't interfere. Verify reality. Haskins grabbed his radio like it was suddenly heavier than it used to be. "Stand by," he said. A few seconds passed, the kind of seconds that feel like minutes when you realize you might have just made the wrong person the center of a very official problem. Haskins stepped out, shutting the door too hard, and walked a few paces away to make a phone call. The body cam caught pieces of it. "Yes. No. He says he's... Yeah. Uniform. I don't know. He's back here." And then, Like a hammer dropping from the sky, a second vehicle pulled up. Clean, unhurried, not aggressive, not angled, just present. A supervisor SUV. Sergeant Eleanor Park stepped out. Park didn't walk like she was looking for a fight. She walked like she was ready to assess. Her eyes moved over the scene, the pilot bag on the pavement, the cuffs, the uniform, the airport badge in Haskins' hand, and the way Haskins looked tight and defensive. She didn't ask Haskins what happened first. She looked at the back seat. "Captain Cole," she said, voice controlled. Darius leaned forward slightly. "Yes, Sergeant." Park's eyebrows lifted just a fraction, not surprised. Recognition, because she'd heard the name through operations, and she'd heard the tone in dispatch's voice. "What's going on?" she asked, looking at Haskins. Haskins started fast, like he wanted to control the story before it got away from him. "He was in restricted. He's claiming to be a pilot. He was evasive." Park held up a hand. "Slow down. Restricted where the service gate," Haskins said. Park looked at the sign on the gate. Then she looked at Darius's uniform again. Then she looked at the badge in Haskins' hand. "That badge grants access to this area," Park said. Haskins' face tightened. "Badges get stolen." Park nodded once. "They can." So we verify she moved to Darius. "Captain, are you willing to provide your airline employee number and date of birth for verification?" "Yes," Darius said immediately. He recited it calmly. Park took out her phone and stepped aside. "Now, here's the part that's almost painful to watch because it's so simple." Park makes one call. One, you can't hear everything, but you can hear enough. Sunrest Ops, Sergeant Park with Airport Police. "I need to verify Captain Darius Cole." "Yes." "Employee number." Pause. "Uh-huh." "Okay. And he's scheduled on Flight 882. "Yes." "Okay." The Park turned back with a look that was not angry. It was worse than angry. It was professional disappointment. She walked to Haskins and said quietly but clearly, "He is exactly who he says he is." Haskins opened his mouth like he was going to argue with reality. Park cut him off. "Uncuff him now." Haskins hesitated, a beat too long. The kind of hesitation that tells you someone isn't thinking about right and wrong. They're thinking about pride. "Sergeant," he began. "Uncuff him," Park repeated louder, and now her voice had steel in it. Haskins pulled the cuffs out, hands jerky. He opened the back door. Darius stepped out slowly, rubbing his wrists once, not dramatically, just enough that the camera caught the red marks. Park faced him. "Captain," clears throat. "Cole, I apologize for this. You are not under arrest. You are not being detained." Darius nodded once. "Thank you, Sergeant." Park looked at his flight bag on the ground. "Do you need medical?" "No," Darius said. "I need to get to briefing." Park turned sharply to Haskins. "Retrieve his bag, and you're coming with me after." Haskins' face flushed. "I was doing my job." Park didn't raise her voice. "No, you weren't." That line hit differently because it wasn't emotional. It was administrative. It sounded like the beginning of a report. Darius picked up his bag as Haskins set it upright, and for a moment, the three of them stood under the floodlights like a courtroom tableau. Darius spoke, calm as ever. "Sergeant Park, I want to make something clear for your report." Park nodded. "Go ahead." Darius looked directly at Haskins' camera. "I complied with every instruction. I presented credentials. I requested a supervisor. I did not resist, and I was detained without a clear, articulated reason." Park's eyes stayed on Darius. Noted. Haskins' jaw worked like he was chewing his own frustration. Darius added one more sentence. "Still controlled. And Officer Haskins made a comment suggesting he didn't believe someone like me could be a pilot." Park's face didn't change much, but her eyes sharpened. What exactly did he say? Darius didn't embellish. He quoted it cleanly. He said, "People like you always have a story." Park stared at Haskins for a long moment, and the silence did more damage than any argument could. "Captain," Park said finally, "go to your briefing. I will personally document this and you will be contacted." Darius nodded and walked away, posture steady. If you didn't know what happened, you'd think he was just another crew member heading to work, but the camera knows. The camera always knows. And Haskins stood there watching him go, and you could see it forming. The realization that this wasn't going to disappear because airports run on documentation. Airlines run on documentation and body cameras. They don't care about excuses. Now most people would have tried to forget it. They'd go to work shaken, vent to a friend, maybe post about it, then move on because fighting the system feels exhausting. But Darius Cole wasn't most people. He finished his flight not because he had to prove something, but because that's who he was. He completed the checklist, he flew the route, he landed safely, he debriefed, he acted like the professional he'd been trained to be. And then, when he got home, he opened his laptop like he was preparing a flight plan. He wrote a formal complaint, not a rant, not a paragraph of emotion, a structured document, date, time, location, names, quotes, sequence of events, the exact language used, the exact points where procedure was violated, the exact reason the detention had no legal footing, the exact moment he requested a supervisor, the exact moment the officer refused, and he sent it to 3 places: Airport Police, Internal Affairs, the Airport Authority Oversight Office, and the State Certification Board that governed peace officer licensing. His complaint wasn't just this felt racist. It was this officer created a false narrative, detained a credentialed employee without articulated cause, ignored verification options, and used biased language. The body camera corroborates the timeline. It was thorough, professional, devastating. The Oversight Office received it on a Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, Officer Haskins was removed from field duty pending investigation. That speed alone tells you everything, because normally these investigations move slow, glacial. But in this case, the evidence wasn't a debate. It was already recorded. An investigator pulled the body cam footage, watched it once, watched it again, then brought in a second reviewer, not because they needed help understanding, but because they needed confirmation that what they were seeing was as bad as it looked, and the footage confirmed key issues. First, Haskins never articulated a legitimate basis for detention beyond vague, suspicious behavior, even after being directly asked to specify it. Second, he ignored immediate verification options, including credential checks through airline operations and badge verification procedures that are standard in secured facilities. Third, he escalated to handcuffing without a safety-based rationale evident in his own narration. But the most serious part wasn't even the cuffs. It was the language, the implication, the people like Yulin paired with disbelief about the uniform and job, the pattern of treating a credentialed professional as an assumed threat. And once investigators frame something as a pattern, they don't stop at one night. They looked at prior complaints. 2 existed already, both informal, both previously dismissed as misunderstandings. One involved a black aircraft mechanic who said Haskins repeatedly demanded real credentials even after they'd been shown. Wailao, another involved a black flight attendant who said Haskins called for backup during a simple badge check, then laughed it off as standard safety. Separately, maybe each incident could be minimized. Together with this body cam footage as the centerpiece, they became impossible to ignore. Now, I want to ask you something. If you were Darius, would you have filed the complaint, or would you have tried to let it go? Because that decision, document, or disappear changes the entire outcome. The investigation moved with unusual clarity. Internal Affairs interviewed Sergeant Park, dispatch, airline operations, and even reviewed gate logs and radio traffic. And in one of the most telling moments, they interviewed Haskins. He tried to justify it. He said the uniform could have been fake. He said badges get stolen. He said he was being proactive. But then they played the footage where he'd been offered verification in 30 seconds and refused. They played the footage where he called Darius evasive, while Darius calmly answered every question. They played the footage where the only suspicious element was Haskins's disbelief. And then they played the moment where Darius requested a supervisor and Haskins said, "No." Like oversight was optional. That's not a mistake. That's a mindset. The final findings were released in a brief but brutal statement. Not dramatic, not emotional, just clean administrative language that hits harder than yelling ever could. They determined Haskins violated detention procedures, failed to follow verification protocols, escalated without objective justification, and engaged in biased conduct inconsistent with his position. The recommendation wasn't a suspension, it wasn't retraining, it was revocation. Because some errors are correctable, some are not. The state certification board scheduled a review. Haskins showed up with representation. Darius provided his statement and evidence. Sergeant Park testified. The body camera said more than anyone in the room ever could. And at the end of it, the board issued their decision. Officer Brent Haskins, Peace Officer certification, his professional license, was permanently revoked, not paused, not for a few years, permanently. His career ended not because of a long chase, not because of a complicated legal debate, but because of a short encounter where he couldn't accept reality. A black man in a pilot uniform could be exactly what he said he was. When the footage hit the internet, EDI released after a formal public records process, people reacted exactly the way you'd expect. Some praised Darius for staying calm and using the system the right way. Others said that could have gone worse, and they weren't wrong because the fact that compliance still led to cuffs is part of the nightmare. A few critics tried the usual angle. He should have just kept his head down, or why provoke the officer with questions? But here's the thing. Asking why you're being detained isn't provocation. It's a right. Requesting a supervisor isn't disrespect. It's accountability. And if that simple accountability triggers escalation, that tells you where the real problem is. After the case went public, the airport authority announced policy changes, not because they suddenly became virtuous, but because the optics were catastrophic, and the liability was real. They mandated additional training on credential verification procedures, de-escalation in secured environments, and bias recognition. They revised how complaints were tracked so informal reports couldn't quietly vanish. And they implemented supervisor response requirements for certain types of detentions, especially when verified credentials were present. In other words, they made their officers learn what Darius already lived by. Procedure protects everyone. So where are they now? Captain Darius Cole continued flying. He didn't become a headline chaser. He didn't build his identity around the incident, but he did something quietly powerful. He started mentoring younger pilots and aviation students, especially those who felt like they had to be twice as perfect to be seen as half as legitimate. He taught them checklists and also taught them documentation, how to stay calm, how to speak clearly, how to request supervisors, how to protect themselves without losing professionalism. As for Haskins, once certification is revoked, law enforcement employment becomes nearly impossible. No license, no badge, no authority. The uniform he'd worn for a decade became nothing more than useless fabric. And the bigger lesson here is the one nobody likes to say out loud, but everyone needs to understand. This story isn't just about one officer and one pilot. It's about power and perception. It's about how quickly some people assume criminality in the wrong body. It's about how systems can be weaponized when the person holding the authority doesn't respect the responsibility. And it's about how knowledge, calm, documented, mass-precise knowledge can equalize a situation that was designed to be unequal, because most people don't know the exact words to say when an authority figure tries to blur the rules. Some officers count on that. They count on fear. They count on confusion. They count on you being too overwhelmed to create a record. But when you run into someone like Darius, someone trained to operate under pressure, someone who doesn't improvise, someone who knows that the camera is a witness, the power dynamic shifts. The badge doesn't automatically win. The uniform doesn't automatically command surrender. Knowledge turns into the equalizer. Now let's address the criticism. Some people always bring up, yes, there is real risk in any police encounter. That's not theoretical. Darius knew that. He calculated every word. He kept his hands visible. He complied. He asked permission before moving. He did everything right and it still happened. And the fact that doing everything right can still lead to cuffs is exactly why documentation matters. Not to be petty, not to be vengeful, but to force the system to look at itself when it would rather look away. So, what should you take from this story? First, calm is not weakness. Calm is control, and control creates clarity. Second, ask for the reason. Not angrily, not sarcastically, just clearly. Make them articulate it. Third, request a supervisor if something feels off. Oversight is a safety mechanism. Fourth, document everything you can as soon as you can. Time, location, statements, sequence. Fifth, professionalism is armor. It doesn't guarantee safety, but it protects your credibility when the narrative gets challenged later. And finally, don't underestimate how powerful one clean complaint can be when it's backed by undeniable evidence. One person, one routine night, less than 15 minutes of bad decisions, and a career ended permanently. That's the power of procedure. That's the importance of accountability. That's what happens when someone tries to turn bias into authority and runs into someone who refuses to let the record be rewritten. Final question for you. What's one thing you learned from this story that you didn't know before? Drop it in the comments and subscribe for more stories where composure, documentation, and truth change the outcome. Hit like if you believe professionalism should protect people, not make them targets. Share this video because everyone needs to see what calm.
Thank you for your time. Should this video have broadened your understanding, please support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to Justice Insight Cam. Keep yourself informed, stay safe, and await our upcoming broadcast.